She slept in a broken car until the mafia boss told her, "Tonight, you sleep in my arms." The first thing she felt was the cold. It was a physical presence, a thin, metallic cold that had seeped through the cracked rubber seals of the window and settled deep in her bones. Lena Rivers woke with a silent gasp, the air fogging in front of her face. Frost painted the inside of the glass, a cruel, beautiful spiderweb that trapped her in the back of the 1997 sedan. She pulled the threadbare wool blanket tighter, but it was useless. The cold was inside her now. She was exhausted, a deep, cellular exhaustion that sleep never touched. Her neck ached from the angle of the seat cushion, and her spine felt fused to the uncomfortable lump of the rear seatbelt mechanism. Another tremor ran through her, this one having nothing to do with the November air. It was a memory, sharp and jagged. Trevor's voice, thick with whiskey and a possessiveness that masqueraded as love. The sudden, sickening sound of a plate shattering against the wall, just inches from her head, the metallic tang of her own blood after her lips split against the floor. Lena squeezed her eyes shut, shoving the ghost of his hand away from her. He was gone, but he had taken everything. Her job, her apartment, her credit, her safety. He had left her with only this car, a car he had conveniently put in her name months ago, and the fading, yellow and purple map of bruises on her ribs. The engine had finally died 3 days ago, leaving her stationary. A sitting target. She had to move. If she stayed still, the misery would cement her to the vinyl. Lena carefully unfolded her cramped limbs, her joints cracked in protest. In the cracked rear-view mirror, she saw a stranger. A woman with hollow, haunted eyes, matted brown hair, and lips chapped raw. She had $1.43, counted and recounted until the coins were warm. Not enough for food. Not enough for gas, even if the car worked, but it was enough for the illusion of normalcy. For a few minutes. Lena walked the 4 blocks to the Morning Star Diner, a 24-hour beacon of fluorescent light that smelled of burnt coffee and old grease. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound that felt like a personal insult. Every head turned. She felt the weight of their judgment like a physical slap. The 2 cops in the corner booth, the weary waitress wiping down the counter, the businessman in his crisp suit. They saw the grime on her coat, the desperation in her posture. They saw someone who did not belong. Keeping her head down, she moved straight to the back, locking herself in the restroom. The icy water from the tap was a shock, but she scrubbed her face and hands with the rough brown paper towels, trying to wash away the scent of the car, the feeling of being invisible and filthy. She emerged and slid onto the farthest stool at the counter, placing her small pile of change on the laminate. "Just coffee, please," she mumbled. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, looked at the coins, then at Lena's face. Her expression softened from professional annoyance to something dangerously close to pity, which was infinitely worse. "Keep it, honey," Brenda said, sliding a heavy, warm ceramic mug toward her. "On the house," she leaned in, lowering her voice, "but you cannot stay here all day. The manager's a stickler." Lena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She wrapped her frozen fingers around the mug. The warmth was shocking, painful. She sipped the bitter black coffee, nursing it for almost an hour, pretending to read the menu she could not afford. She had no next move. Night fell fast, the concrete canyons of Bravestone swallowing the weak afternoon sun. The temperature plummeted. She could not stay in the diner's lot. The manager had already threatened to have her car towed before it had died. She had spent her last few days of gas parking in a different spot every night, a rotation of industrial parks and quiet, dead-end streets. Tonight, she drifted, walking until her feet ached, looking for a place that felt safe. She found herself in the upscale district, where the streetlights were bright and the buildings were monuments of stone and glass. She settled on an alley beside a massive, elegant building. It looked like an old-world bank, with heavy, carved oak doors and polished brass fixtures. A discreet gold plaque read La Fortezza, the fortress. Lena let out a dry, humorless huff. How ironic. She did not know it was the beating heart of the Bravestone underworld. She did not know it belonged to Dominic Renzetti, a man whose name was only ever whispered by those who knew better, and never spoken by those who did not. She only knew the alley was well lit, and the muffled, deep thump bass from inside the walls made her feel fractionally less alone. She climbed into the back seat, pulled the blanket over her head, and willed herself to disappear. High above the alley, in a smoked glass office that overlooked the entire city. Dominic Renzetti stood watching the street. He was a man carved from shadow and discipline, his suit a custom armor. And the Valentius are pushing back on the waterfront access. His consigliere, Marco was saying, gesturing to blueprints spread across a massive mahogany table. Dominic held up a single, large hand. The room fell silent. His two capos and his consigliere stopped, turning to see what had captured the boss's attention. "Who is that?" Dominic's voice was a low rumble, devoid of emotion but demanding an answer. Marco squinted, following his gaze down to the alley. "What, boss? The junk car?" "The person," Dominic clarified, his patience a thin, tightly wound wire. In the back seat, under the blanket, the men looked, probably a junkie. "Dom," one offered, "or one of the girls waiting for a client." "No," Dominic said. She was not moving. She was not soliciting. She was hiding. "Find out." One of the men made a quiet call. 5 minutes later, he hung up. "Name's Lena Rivers. Cars registered to her. A mountain of parking tickets. An eviction notice last month. But no priors, no affiliation. She's clean." "Clean," Dominic mused. "And living in an alley." He watched as the shape in the car shuddered, a violent tremor he could see even from 4 stories up. A cold front was moving in. The news had said the temperature would drop into the low 20s. "She will freeze," he said, more to himself than to his men. "Boss, with respect," Marco urged, gesturing back to the table. "We have bigger problems than some stray." Dominic turned, his dark eyes landing on Marco, pinning him in place. The consigliere wisely shut his mouth. "Handle the Valenti issue. Marco, I want a solution, not a report, by morning." He straightened the cuffs of his shirt. "I am going down." His men stared. Dominic Renzetti did not go down for anything, but they knew that tone. It was final. It must have been near midnight when the knock came. Lena shot upright, a scream caught in her throat. Terror, cold and absolute, seized her. "He found me. Trevor found me." But the face in the window was not Trevor. This man was tall, impossibly so in the narrow alley. He was wrapped in a dark overcoat, and his features were sharp, handsome in a way that was more intimidating than beautiful. He was not looking at her with rage. He was looking at her with an intense, unreadable curiosity. He knocked again, softer this time. Just 2 sharp raps. Lena fumbled with the broken window crank, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip it. The glass lowered 2 inches, letting in a blast of air so cold it burned her lungs. "You should not be here," the man said. His voice was deep and smooth, like polished stone. It was not a question or a threat, just a statement of fact. I will be gone by morning," Lena stammered, her voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. The car, it stopped." The man studied her, his gaze missing nothing. "It is cold." He held up a silver thermos. "This is coffee. Hot. With cream and sugar." Lena stared at the thermos as if it were a snake. "I do not have any money." A flicker of something, impatience, or perhaps sadness, crossed his features. "I am not selling it." He unscrewed the top, poured the steaming, fragrant liquid into the lid, and held it out through the narrow gap in the window. She hesitated. Never take anything from strangers. Her mother's voice, a distant echo. But the aroma, sweet and hot, curled into the car. Her body moved before her brain could stop it. She reached for the cup. Her fingers, red and raw, trembled so violently that the hot coffee sloshed over the rim, scalding her skin. "Damn it," she hissed, yanking her hand back. The cup fell, clattering to the floor mat. The precious hot liquid vanished instantly into the grimy carpet. The man, Dominic, watched the tremor in her hands. He had seen fear his entire life. He had seen addiction. This was different. This was the vibration of a body running on empty, of nerves frayed past the breaking point. "You live in this car," he stated. Humiliation burned hotter than the coffee. "No," she lied, the word sharp. "I am just waiting for someone." Dominic's eyes flickered to the blanket, the empty water bottles, the small, worn duffel bag on the passenger seat. He did not call her a liar. "You cannot stay here." "I told you, I will be gone," she snapped, a sudden, desperate anger rising in her. "By morning, please, just leave me alone." Dominic held her gaze for a long, heavy moment. He saw the defiant tilt of her chin, but he also saw the faint, yellowish edge of a bruise on her jawline, barely visible in the dim service light. He recognized the shadow of violence. It was the world he lived in. He nodded slowly, taking a step back from the car, giving her space. "By morning," he repeated. Lena quickly cranked the window shut, her heart hammering against her ribs. She watched him walk, not back to the club's main entrance, but down the alley, disappearing around the corner. Dominic did not return to his office. He found Angelo, his head of security, near the front door. Angelo was a mountain of quiet loyalty. "The girl in the alley, the blue sedan," Dominic said, his voice low. "Boss, you want her moved?" "No, I want her watched. Park a car at the end of the street. Black glass. No one approaches her. No one talks to her. If anyone but her goes near that car, you handle them. Understand?" Angelo nodded. "The order clear. Protection." "And in the morning, boss?" "In the morning," Dominic said, glancing toward the alley, "we will see if she is still lying." Lena did not sleep. She sat rigid, her back against the door, watching the mouth of the alley. A few minutes after the man left, a black town car glided silently to the corner and parked, its engine off, its windows dark. It just sat there, watching. She did not know if it was a threat or, strangely, a shield. She was too cold to care. Morning arrived not with sunlight, but with a weak, gray light that made the city look bruised. Lena's body felt like it was made of glass. Every muscle ached. She had to leave. The black car was still there. But the man from last night was right. She could not stay. She slid into the driver's seat, her frozen fingers fumbling with the key. She put it in the ignition and turned. Click, whir, click, click, nothing. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, please." She tried again. Click, click, click. The battery was dead. The engine was dead. Everything was dead. It was the final straw. The last thread of her composure, already worn thin by weeks of hunger, fear, and relentless cold, snapped. Lena Rivers leaned forward, pressed her forehead against the freezing plastic steering wheel, and wept. Not quiet, dignified tears, but ugly, choking sobs that racked her entire body. She was trapped. She had nowhere to go, no one to call, and no way to get there. A tap on the window. She ignored it, pressing her head harder against the wheel. "Go away, go away." Another tap, firmer this time. Lena lifted her head, anger warring with despair. She wiped her face with the gritty sleeve of her coat. It was him, the man from last night. He looked different in the daylight, sharper, more defined. His dark hair was perfect, his jaw uncompromising. He wore a gray, tailored overcoat that probably cost more than her entire life savings, back when she had them, when he was not alone. Standing slightly behind him was a man in greasy overalls, holding a large toolbox, and in the man's other hand, he held a large paper bag that smelled unmistakably of bacon and fresh coffee. Lena cranked the window down, the cold air a welcome sting. "It will not start," she said, her voice a raw croak. "I know," Dominic replied. "This is Sal. He's a mechanic." Sal grunted a hello and motioned for her to pop the hood. She fumbled for the latch and pulled it. I cannot pay him," Lena said, the humiliation rising like bile. "Sal is taken care of," Dominic said simply. He held out the paper bag. "This is for you, breakfast, and the coffee you dropped last night." She stared at the bag, her stomach cramped, a painful, hollow ache. "I cannot accept this." Dominic's patience was wearing, but not with her. It was with the situation, with the man, whoever he was, who had put her here. "You are cold," he said, his voice soft but edged with steel. "You are hungry. Your car is broken. These are facts. Accept the help, Miss Rivers." She flinched. He knew her name. He saw the fresh wave of fear in her eyes and sighed, softening his approach. "Look, I'm not offering you a handout. I am offering a solution, just for one night." Sal slammed the hood of the car shut, wiping his hands on a red rag. "Batteries shot, alternators gone, and the starters fried. This thing is not going anywhere. Boss, it is a brick." Lena's face crumpled again, a fresh wave of despair washing over her. Dominic moved closer, blocking her view of Sal, forcing her to look only at him. "Just for one night," he repeated, his voice low and firm, compelling. "It is going to be 20 degrees tonight. You will not survive that. My driver will take you to a safe place. A warm place. You can sleep. You can eat in the morning. If you want to leave, you leave. No questions. No debt." "A shelter?" she whispered, grasping at the only logical explanation. A dark look passed over his face. "No, not a shelter, my place." Her blood ran colder than the air. "I cannot go to a man's house. I do not even know you." "It is a private suite," he countered, anticipating her fear. "You will be alone. You will be safe. I give you my word." Lena looked at him, really looked at him. He was dangerous. Every instinct she had screamed that this man was not someone to be trifled with. But his eyes were not cruel. They were absolute. He was not asking, he was telling her what was going to happen. She was tired. She was so incredibly, numbingly tired. The fight was gone. "Okay," she whispered. The word was so quiet. He barely caught it. "Okay," she said again, louder, her voice breaking. A flicker of relief in his expression, gone as quickly as it came. He nodded once, a sharp, decisive motion. "Good, Angelo will drive you." He motioned to the black town car at the corner, the man who had been watching her all night. Lena grabbed her single duffel bag from the passenger seat. She did not look back at the car. It felt like climbing out of a coffin. The ride was silent. Angelo, the driver, did not speak. Lena stared out the window as the neighborhoods changed, from gritty industrial zones to gleaming, modern high-rises. They did not go to the club. They drove to the center of the city, to a tower of black glass that seemed to pierce the sky. They bypassed the lobby, taking a private elevator in the garage. Angelo used a special key, then pressed the top button, marked PH. The elevator moved with unnerving speed and silence. The doors opened, not into a hallway, but directly into the suite. Lena stopped, her breath catching in her throat. It was not a room. It was an expanse. The entire floor, the walls were glass, offering a 180-degree view of Bravestone that made her feel dizzy. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, and sparse. It was less a home and more a statement. It was luxurious, yes, but it was also empty, impersonal, and quiet. So quiet. "There is food in the kitchen," Angelo said from the elevator, making her jump. "The bedroom is through that door. Lock it if you wish. No one will bother you, Mr. Renzetti will be informed that you have arrived." And with that, he was gone. The elevator doors slid shut with a quiet, expensive shush. Lena was alone. She stood in the center of the vast living room for a full 10 minutes. Her dirty duffel bag still clutched in her hand. It was the quietest place she had been in months. No yelling, no sirens, no traffic. Just the faint, distant hum of the city thousands of feet below. She walked, as if in a trance, toward the bedroom. The bed was the size of her entire car. She touched the sheets. They were impossibly soft. She went into the adjoining bathroom. It was larger than her last apartment. A glass shower, a deep soaking tub, a counter lined with products she had only ever seen in magazines. Lena turned on the shower, cranking the heat as high as it would go. She stepped under the scalding water, dropping her filthy clothes on the marble tile. She scrubbed her skin until it was red and raw, washing off the grime of the street, the smell of the car, the lingering scent of fear. She cried again, but this time, the tears were silent. lost in the rush of the water and the steam. She was not sure if she had been rescued or if she had just traded one cage for another, infinitely more gilded one. But as the warmth seeped into her bones, chasing away the chill for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she realized she was too tired to care. For tonight, she was safe. Lena woke slowly, uncurling from a warmth that felt alien. For a confused, blissful second, she did not know where she was. There was no freezing draft, no ache in her spine, no smell of mildew and old gasoline. The world, for this one moment, was soft. She opened her eyes. The light was pale gray, filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows. She was in a bed, a massive, cloud-like expanse of white linens that seemed to swallow her whole. The mattress supported every inch of her, and the pillow under her head was so soft it felt like sinking into air. She sat up, pulling the thick comforter with her. The movement revealed the clothes she was wearing. They were not her own. On a chair by the bed, her own filthy, damp clothes were gone, replaced by a set of simple, clean items: soft gray sweatpants, a plain black t-shirt, and thick wool socks. There was no note. She slid her feet onto the plush, dark carpet. Her legs were shaky, weak from hunger and the sudden shock of comfort. She padded into the massive, silent living room. On the gleaming marble island in the kitchen, a tray was waiting. It held a covered plate, a bottle of water, and a small, insulated pot of what smelled like fresh coffee. Under the plate, she found scrambled eggs, thick-cut toast, and fruit. It was a simple breakfast, but to her, it was a banquet. It was the privacy that broke her. She sat at the counter, wrapped in a blanket she had found on the sofa, and ate slowly, deliberately. And as she did, the sheer, quiet humanity of the gesture, the clean clothes, the hot food, the absence of a threat, undid her. She was not being yelled at. She was not being watched. She was not cold. Lena buried her face in her hands and cried, the tears a hot, painful release. They were tears of gratitude, but also of profound shame. She had been reduced to this, a charity case, taken in by a man whose name she did not even know. A man who lived in a glass tower, far removed from the world that had nearly crushed her. She spent the day exploring the massive apartment like a nervous ghost. She was terrified to touch anything, to leave a mark, to give him a reason to revoke his kindness. The place was beautiful but sterile, like a high-end hotel suite that no one ever truly lived in. The colors were blacks, grays, and whites. There were no photographs, no clutter, no sign of a personal life, just power, wealth, and silence. Late in the afternoon, the private elevator chimed. Lena froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She backed away, instinctively looking for an exit before remembering she was 400 feet in the air. The door slid open, and he stepped out. The man from the alley, in his own home. He was even more imposing. He had shed the overcoat. He was in a perfectly tailored dark suit, the white shirt stark against his lightly tanned skin. He looked like he had just stepped out of a boardroom meeting, not a world that left people sleeping in alleys. He stopped when he saw her, seemingly as surprised by her presence as she was by his. An awkward, heavy silence filled the space between them. "You are still here," he said. It was not an accusation, just an observation. Yes, thank you," Lena said, her voice small. She gestured uselessly at the kitchen, at the bed. For everything, the food, the clothes. I will wash them and return them." He gave a slight, dismissive wave, his eyes scanning her. He was checking his investment, she thought, seeing if the stray he brought in was going to ruin his carpets. "My name is Dominic," he said, moving past her toward the kitchen. He opened a cabinet, revealing rows of identical, minimalist glasses. "I trust you slept well." "Like the dead," she replied, then instantly regretted it. The words sounded grim. Yes, very well. Thank you, Mr. Dominic. He poured himself a glass of water, his back to her. He was giving her space. She realized, not crowding her. "You do not have to thank me for basic decency. Lena." He knew her name. He had said it yesterday, but hearing it in this place, from him, made it sound different. Owned. He turned, leaning his hips against the counter, and finally looked at her. His gaze was intense, analytical. He was not looking at her body, but at her face, her eyes, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "I will be gone in the morning," she said, reciting the line she had practiced. I needed to find a shelter that—" "You will not find a shelter," he interrupted, his voice flat, but not unkind. "Not one that is safe, not in this weather." "But I cannot stay here," she insisted, panic rising. "I am a stranger. You do not know me." "I know enough," he said simply. He did not press her. He did not ask her what had happened. He did not ask her about the bruise on her jaw, now faded to a sickly yellow, or the shadow of fear in her eyes that had nothing to do with him. He just watched her. "Eat," he said, nodding toward the kitchen. "There is more food in the refrigerator. Use what you want. The bedroom is yours. Lock the door. I will not bother you." He finished his water, placed the glass in the empty sink, and walked toward a hallway she had not noticed. "I have work to do in my office," he said over his shoulder, and then he was gone, disappearing behind a heavy wooden door that clicked shut with ominous finality. Lena was left alone in the silence, her heart beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was safe, she told herself. But she had a terrible, sinking feeling that she had just fallen into the orbit of something far more powerful and far more dangerous than she could ever understand. The flashes came at night, when the silence of the penthouse was too deep, too absolute. It left room for the past to rush in. She would be half asleep, and suddenly she was back in their old apartment, the one she had paid for. She saw Trevor's face, flushed with cheap beer and a rage that came from nowhere. "You think you are better than me?" he would sneer, his hand tightening on her arm. He had been charming, at first, a struggling musician with a poet's soul, or so she had thought. But the poetry had quickly turned to poison. She remembered the day he had accidentally spilled a pot of boiling water, splashing her arm. The scar was still there. She remembered the calls, so many calls, collection agencies, the bank. He had found her wallet, taken her new credit cards, the ones she had gotten to rebuild her life. He ran them up to their limits in 2 days, buying guitars, sound equipment, things they could pawn. When she confronted him, he had laughed. "They will not believe you. They will believe me." And they had. She remembered sitting in the bank, her face bruised from a fall down the stairs, trying to explain the charges. The loan officer had looked at her with undisguised pity and suspicion. The credit was ruined. The final memory was the worst. Her boss at the restaurant, a kind, older man named Sal, had called her into his office. "Lena, I am sorry. 2 customers complained, said you were rude, said you smelled of alcohol." "But Sal, that is not true," she had pleaded. "I know, kid, but he was here. Your ex, Trevor, he made a scene, threatened to call the health department, said you were stealing. I cannot have that. He had stolen her job. He had taken her apartment, her money, her good name. He had left her with nothing but the car and the bruises. The flashbacks always ended the same way, with the sound of his laughter and the sharp, terrifying slam of a door. Dominic, meanwhile, learned her entire life story in less than an 8-hour period. While Lena slept, his organization had moved. He sat in his office, the city lights spread out below him like a diamond carpet, and read the single-page report. Lena Rivers, 26, former honors student, waitress at the Gilded Spoon for 3 years, evicted. Restraining order filed against one Trevor Hayes. Violation reported, no arrest, credit score, abysmal. No family in the state, no assets, save a 1997 sedan. He stared at the words restraining order and violation reported until they blurred. The system had failed her. Trevor Hayes. He rolled the name around in his mind, committing it to memory, a name to be dealt with. But he said nothing to her. He kept his distance. He would leave in the morning before she woke and return late at night. He gave her the one thing he suspected she had not had in a long time, choice. She could stay or she could go. He would not force her, but he knew she had nowhere to go. Lena could not stand the idleness. She could not stand the feeling of being a kept thing, a pet he had rescued. She was indebted to him, and the weight of that debt was suffocating. After 3 days of living in the sterile, silent penthouse, she started to clean. She scrubbed the already spotless marble counters. She organized the barren refrigerator. She learned how to use the complex, high-end washing machine to launder her new, simple clothes. She needed to feel useful. One evening, she found the pantry. It was stocked like a bunker for a gourmand. Flours, sugars, spices from all over the world, things she had only dreamed of cooking with. She would bake. It was a small, quiet act of rebellion. Baking was the one thing that was truly hers. Her grandmother had taught her. It was science and magic, a way to create comfort from nothing. She found yeast, flour, salt, and honey. Hours later, the sterile penthouse was transformed. It smelled of home. It smelled of warmth, of yeast, of caramelized sugar. She had 2 perfect golden brown loaves of honey oat bread cooling on the counter when the elevator chimed. Dominic stopped. He was later than usual. The negotiations with the Valenti crew had gone poorly, and the resulting street-level disagreement had been messy. He was tired. His shoulder ached, and his suit jacket was buttoned to hide the fact that his shirt cuff was stained. But he stopped. Not because of the sight of her, but because of the smell. It was the first time this place had ever smelled like anything other than glass cleaner and money. "You baked," he said. I hope it is okay," Lena said, her hands fluttering nervously, wiping them on a towel. "I used some things from the pantry. I will replace them." He unbuttoned his jacket, his movements stiff. "Do not be ridiculous. It smells—" He paused, searching for the word. "Good. It smells good." He pulled off the jacket, tossing it onto a chair. He rolled up his sleeves, and that is when she saw it. It was not a stain on his cuff. It was a long, dark smear of blood, fresh and wet, running from his wrist to his knuckles. Another, darker stain was blooming on the white fabric of his shirt, just below his ribs. Lena took a sharp, involuntary step back. Her hand flew to her mouth. The bread, the warmth, the illusion of safety. It all evaporated. The blood was dark, almost black in the low light of the kitchen. It was real. "Oh, God," she whispered, her eyes wide with a familiar terror. Blood meant violence. Blood meant pain. Blood meant Trevor. Dominic froze. He looked down at his hands as if just noticing the blood. He had not had time to clean up. He had wanted to get home, to the quiet, to the strange, nervous woman who smelled like bread. He saw her face. He saw the color drain from it, saw the way she wrapped her arms around herself, making herself small. She was not looking at him. She was looking past him, at a ghost. She was trembling. "Lena," he said, his voice low and urgent. She flinched, a violent, full-body shudder, as if he had raised his hand to her. That, more than anything, broke through his exhaustion. Her terror was not of him. He realized it was because of him. He was the trigger. His protective instincts, usually reserved for his family and his organization, roared to life. He held up his hands, palms out, showing her they were empty, despite the blood. "Lena, look at me." She looked, her eyes brimming with tears. "This," he said, indicating the blood, "is not yours. It will never be yours." He moved to the sink, his movements deliberate and slow, as if trying not to startle a deer. He turned on the hot water, took the soap, and began to scrub, the water turning pink and swirling down the drain. "This is my work," he said, his back to her. "It is ugly. It is often necessary, but there are rules." He turned, drying his hands on a black towel. He was clean now, but the image was seared into her mind. "I do not hurt innocents," he said, his voice a low, hard promise. "I do not hurt women. I do not hurt children. Ever. Do you understand me?" She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. He took a step toward her. She did not flinch, but she did not breathe, either. He reached out, not to her, but to the bread. He tore off a small piece from the end of the loaf. "This," he said, "is a gift." He ate the bread, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you." That night, neither of them could sleep. The unspoken tension, the line that had been drawn, was too sharp. Dominic found her on the balcony, standing in the cold, wrapped in the same blanket she had been clutching when he found her. The city glowed beneath them, a silent, sprawling universe of light and shadow. "You should not be out here," he said, his voice a rumble beside her. "It is cold." "I am used to the cold," she replied, her voice distant. She stared at the river, a ribbon of black cutting through the lights. "What do you do? Dominic?" He leaned on the railing a few feet away, respecting her space. "I protect what is mine, my family, my territory, my business." "You are a gangster," she said. It was not an accusation. "Some people use that word. The men you hurt tonight," she whispered. "Were they innocent?" He was silent for a long time. "They were men who believed it was acceptable to sell poison to children in a schoolyard I protect. They were corrected." Lena absorbed this. It was a brutal, simple, terrifying logic. "You live in a world I cannot even imagine. And you," he said, turning to look at her profile, "have survived a world I would never allow to touch you." A single tear tracked down her cheek, and she wiped it away angrily. "I do not know how to trust," she admitted, the confession torn from her. "The last man I trusted. He tried to erase me. He took my home, my job. He told me I was nothing so many times that I started to believe him. Every time a man raises his voice or slams a door, I break." She looked at him, her eyes raw. "I see the blood on your hands, and I should be terrified of you, but the only thing I felt was angry, because it looked so much like my own." The wind was picking up, rattling the heavy glass doors. A low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. A storm was rolling in, fast. "You are safer here than you have ever been," he said, his voice a vow, as if his words were a cue. The first fat drops of rain began to splat against the glass. The wind howled, a sudden, violent shriek. It was the sound, the sudden, violent shriek of the wind. It sounded like Trevor. It sounded like a scream. Lena's breath hitched. "No," she whispered. "Lena, let's go inside," Dominic said, reaching for her arm. "No, no, no." She started to pant, backing away from him, her eyes wide and unseeing. She was not on the balcony. She was in the old apartment, and Trevor had just broken the lock. "He's coming," she gasped, her hands flying to her head. "I cannot. He's going to find me." "Lena, you are safe," Dominic insisted, his voice hardening with concern. But she was already gone. She bolted, shoving past him, running into the penthouse. The lights flickered as the storm hit. She ran, not to the bedroom, but to the bathroom she had used the first day. She slammed the heavy door, fumbled for the lock, and clicked it shut. She slid down the door, her back pressed against the wood, hyperventilating. The air was too thick. The walls were too close. The sound of the thunder was the sound of his fists on the door. "Lena!" Dominic's voice was muffled on the other side. "Open the door. You are having a panic attack. It is just the storm." "Go away!" she screamed, her voice a raw tear. "He will hurt you. He will hurt me. Let me go." She was sobbing, dragging in air in ragged, painful gasps. She was going to pass out. "Lena, I am warning you. I am coming in," he yelled. "Stand back from the door." She just curled tighter, her head on her knees. She heard a muffled, heavy thud, then another. The wood groaned. With a sound like a gunshot, the lock mechanism shattered. The door flew open, slamming against the marble wall. Dominic stood there, his chest hag, his suit jacket gone, his face a mask of terrible concern. Lena scrambled backward, crab-walking away from him until she hit the cold porcelain of the bathtub. She was trapped. He stopped, holding up his hands. "It is me. It is just me," he said, his voice dropping, becoming impossibly gentle. "It is Dominic. You are in the penthouse. You are safe. The storm. It is just a storm." He took one slow step. She whimpered. He took another. "I am not him. Lena, I will never be him." He crouched in front of her. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. Her eyes were wild. "I'm right here," he whispered. "You are not alone." He did not hesitate. He did not ask permission. He simply reached for her, sliding one arm behind her back, the other under her knees, and lifted her. She was light like a child. She weighed nothing. She gasped, her hands flying to his shoulders, clinging to him as the only solid thing in a world that was spinning apart. She buried her face in the curve of his neck, her sobs finally breaking free. They were not screams of terror anymore. They were the sounds of a pain so deep. She was drowning in it. Dominic held her, his grip unbreakable, his jaw set. He walked out of the destroyed bathroom, past the splintered doorframe, and carried her into the bedroom. He did not turn on the light. The room was lit only by the flashes of lightning outside, which turned the city into a stark, monochrome photograph. He sat on the edge of the bed, still holding her, rocking her as she wept. He said nothing, just let her cry, his large hand rubbing circles on her back, a steady, warm pressure that was both grounding and protective. He held her until the last of the sobs quieted, until her breathing was still ragged, but no longer hysterical, until her body went limp with utter exhaustion in his arms. She was asleep, or close to it. He carefully shifted, pulling back the covers with one hand. He laid her down, intending to leave her, to give her the space she needed. But as he tried to pull his arm from beneath her fingers, which were still fisted in his shirt, tightened. "No," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep and tears. "Please, do not." He looked at her. Her face, pale and tear-stained, was finally, truly at peace. But she was terrified of waking up alone. He made his decision. He kicked off his shoes, stripped off his ruined shirt, and slid into the bed beside her. Over the covers. He was in his trousers and undershirt, but he was there. He gently pulled her against his side. She moved instantly, like a plant seeking sun, curling into his warmth. She tucked her head into the space just under his chin, her body fitting against his as if it were made to be there. One of her hands rested, tentatively, on his chest, right over his heart. Dominic lay perfectly still, staring at the ceiling as the storm raged outside. He felt the light, fragile weight of her, the rhythm of her breathing as it finally deepened, syncing with his own. He reached up, his hand calloused and large, and brushed a stray strand of damp hair from her cheek. His fingers lingered, the skin of her face impossibly soft. He felt a strange, unfamiliar ache in his own chest. It was a fierce, savage tenderness. He leaned down, his lips brushing the top of her head. "Tonight," he whispered. So low the storm almost swallowed the words. "You sleep in my arms." Lena did not resist. She sighed, a deep, shuddering release of all the tension, all the fear. And for the first time in years, surrounded by the strength of a man who was the most dangerous thing she had ever known, Lena Rivers slept, and she was safe. Healing was not an event, it was a process, measured in small, quiet victories. It began with food. After the night of the storm, the night she had slept in his arms, she woke to find him gone. The bed beside her cold but for the imprint of where he had been. He had left her with a new, unspoken permission. She was no longer a ghost in his home, she was a resident, so Lena cooked. She baked bread, yes, but then she moved on. She made soups that filled the sterile penthouse with the scent of thyme and garlic. She roasted chickens. She found a quiet joy in the simple, physical act of creation. It was an offering, a way to fill the silence, a way to say thank you without having to find the right, awkward words. Her smile, when it first returned, was a shy, fragile thing. She would catch her own reflection in the vast walls of glass, a woman she barely recognized, her face softer, her eyes less haunted, and a small, involuntary curve would touch her lips. Dominic, in turn, adjusted to her presence. He had assigned Angelo, his silent mountain of a security chief, to be her shadow. He was not a jailer, but a guardian. "You are not a prisoner here, Lena." Dominic had told her, his voice low. "This building has facilities, a gym, a pool, a library. Angelo will escort you. You are safe anywhere within these walls." She had started to explore, with Angelo always 10 paces behind, quiet and unobtrusive. She swam in the Olympic-sized pool on the 10th floor, the water a clear, sterile blue. She read old books in the leather-bound library. She was healing. The bruises on her soul were fading, just as the ones on her ribs had. Dominic watched this transformation with a conflicted heart. He was drawn to her, to the softness she brought into his brutalist world. He found himself lingering in the kitchen when she was cooking, just to watch the focused, gentle efficiency of her hands. He was drawn to the quiet strength that had taken her to survive what she had, but he hesitated. He would come home, the metallic tang of violence still in his senses, and find her reading on the sofa, a soft blanket pooled at her feet. She would look up, and for one terrible second, the fear would flash in her eyes again. It was a reflex, a shadow of the man who had hurt her. In that second, she did not see Dominic. She saw a threat. He was terrified that she would only ever see him as dangerous. He was the man who had blood on his hands, the man who had splintered a doorframe. How could a woman like her, a woman who baked bread and hummed to soft music, ever truly be safe with a man like him? He was the dragon, and she was the treasure he was guarding, but he was still a dragon. The incident happened on a Tuesday. Lena had taken to using the private gym, usually empty in the late afternoon. Angelo stood by the door, impassive as ever. Lena was on the treadmill, lost in the rhythm of her own breathing. When two of Dominic's younger men entered, they were loud, arrogant, and flushed with the power that came from working for the Renzettis. They did not see her at first, her headphones blocking their voices. But as she slowed her pace, she caught their words, carried on the air-conditioned breeze. "Cannot believe the boss brought a stray in," the first one said, grabbing a towel. "I mean, right in the penthouse." "I know." The second one laughed, a high, unpleasant sound. "Marco said she was living in a car, a total mess. Wonder what she does to earn her keep. Must be good at it. Probably just a broken little thing he feels sorry for," the first one said, shrugging. "He will get tired of her. He always does. A stray, a broken little thing." The words were like pebbles, sharp and thrown with casual cruelty. They struck her with pinpoint accuracy, shattering the fragile new peace she had built. The shame, the humiliation of her lowest point, rushed back in, hot and suffocating. She was not Lena. She was a stray. She was a charity case. She was, in their eyes, a whore. She did not cry. She did not look at them. She carefully, deliberately, pressed the stop button on the treadmill. She wiped her face with her own towel, her movements calm, her expression utterly blank. She walked past them, head held high, and did not acknowledge their sudden, uncomfortable silence as they realized she had heard every word. Angelo's eyes, dark and angry, met hers. He opened his mouth. She gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Not here." She pretended it did not hurt. She went back to the penthouse, showered, and started to prepare dinner, her movements precise, almost robotic. Dominic found her hours later. The penthouse was silent, no music. The lights were dim. She was standing on the balcony, staring at the city, wrapped in a blanket, just as he had found her the night of the storm. "Lena?" he said, his voice quiet. She did not turn. He knew, instantly, that something was broken. The light he had seen rekindle in her was gone, snuffed out. "Lena, talk to me," he said, moving to stand beside her. "It smells like rain," she said, her voice a hollow whisper. "What happened?" he demanded, the velvet slipping from his tone. "It does not matter. I am fine." "You are a terrible liar," he said, his voice hardening. "You are here, but you are gone. Tell me, now." A single hot tear escaped and slid down her cheek. She wiped it away as if it were acid. "They called me a stray," she whispered, the words so low he had to lean in to hear them. "Your men, in the gym. They said I was a broken little thing, that you would get tired of me." Dominic went perfectly, terrifyingly still. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. He did not yell. He did not curse. His voice, when it came, was a blade of ice. "Who?" "Dominic, please. It does not matter. It is what I am. I was. They are not wrong." "Who?" he repeated. She flinched. The anger was rolling off him in palpable waves, a dark, heavy pressure. She gave him the names, her voice trembling. He turned, his face a mask of cold fury, and stalked back into the penthouse. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his movements sharp. Lena followed him, her heart hammering. "Dominic, what are you going to do? Please, do not hurt them." It was just words. He held up a hand, silencing her. He spoke into the phone. "Angelo, the two men from the gym. Bring them to my office, now." He hung up without waiting for a reply. "Dominic, stop!" Lena cried, grabbing his arm. "This is not you. This is what he used to do. He would get angry for me. And it was terrifying. It was about his pride, not my pain." He stopped. Her words and the desperate grip of her small hand on his bicep cut through the red haze of his rage. He looked down at her pale, frightened face. He let out a long, slow breath, visibly reining in the violence that simmered just beneath his skin. "They put tears on your face," he said, his voice rough. "They disrespected you. In my building, they disrespected me. I do not care about them," she said, her voice breaking. "I care about this anger. It scares me." He looked at her for a long moment, the internal battle warring on his features. "I will not harm them," he said, the words costing him. "But I will handle this." He left her, not for his office in the penthouse, but for the elevator. He was going down to the club. He was going to handle it. Lena was left alone in the silence, her body shaking. She had provoked the dragon. He returned 3 long hours later. He looked the same. His suit was immaculate. His hair was perfect, but his eyes were dark, and his knuckles were faintly red. He had lied. He found her in the living room, curled on the sofa, waiting. "It is done," he said, his voice flat with finality. "They have been reassigned. They will not speak to you, or of you, ever again. No one," he said, his gaze sweeping the room as if to address any lingering ghosts, "will ever disrespect you in my house again." He stood over her, a dark colossus of power and protection, and Lena, overwhelmed by a storm of conflicting emotions, fear of his anger, gratitude for his defense, and a confusing, powerful attraction to the sheer, untamed force of him, did the last thing either of them expected. She stood up, rose on her toes, and pressed her mouth to his. It was not a kiss, it was a collision, a brief, desperate press of her soft lips against his hard, unyielding mouth. It was a thank you, a plea, and an apology all in one. She pulled back instantly, her face burning with shame. "I am sorry," she stammered, backing away. I do not know why I did that. I did not mean. I do not owe you that. I am not. Lena?" His voice was a command. He stepped into her space, closing the distance she had tried to create. He did not grab her. He did not force her. He simply enclosed her. He gently cupped her face, his large, warm hands bracketing her jaw, his thumbs stroking the high curve of her cheekbones. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. He lowered his head, not to kiss her, but to rest his forehead against hers. They stood like that, breathing the same air, his eyes closed, hers wide and staring at the knot of his silk tie. "You do not owe me anything," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion she could not name. "You do not owe me for the food, for this room, for my protection. Nothing." He pulled back just enough to meet her gaze. His eyes were dark, intense, and all attention. "But I want," he continued, his voice dropping, "everything. You give freely." He was giving her back the power. He was not taking. He was asking. And in that moment, Lena knew that this man, this dangerous, complicated man, was the first person in her life to ever truly see her. The dynamic shifted. The air between them became charged, a thin, humming wire of unspoken want. They coexisted in the penthouse, no longer protector and victim, but something else. Man and woman. One night, almost a week later, another storm rolled in, rattling the glass walls. But this time, Lena was not afraid. The low rumble of the thunder felt like a comforting bass line. She had found Dominic's old, unused record player and a small collection of vinyl, soft jazz, the kind that sounded like smoky, late-night clubs. She put a record on, the crackle and hiss filling the room, and she danced. She was barefoot in one of his old, soft t-shirts that she slept in, and a pair of leggings. She was not performing, she was just moving. A slow sway of her hips, her arms loose, her eyes closed, a small, genuine smile on her face. Dominic came out of his office, drawn by the music. He stopped in the doorway, and for a full minute, he just watched her. She was life. In his world of glass and steel and blood, she was all soft curves, warm skin, and easy grace. She was everything he was not, and everything he suddenly, desperately, wanted. She spun, a slow, lazy turn, and saw him. She stopped, her cheeks flushing. "I'm sorry, the music. I can turn it off." "Do not stop," he said, his voice quiet. He walked toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. He shed his suit jacket, tossing it on a chair, and undid the top button of his shirt, loosening his tie. I do not really know how to dance," she stammered, her heart beginning to pound. "Neither do I," he said. He held out his hand. She took it. His skin was warm, his grip firm. He did not pull her into a formal dance. He just pulled her close. He settled one hand on the small of her back, his fingers splayed wide, and laced the fingers of his other hand with hers. They swayed, barely moving, to the sound of a lone saxophone. Lena rested her cheek against his chest. She could feel the steady, strong beat of his heart beneath her ear. It was the most grounding sound she had ever heard. "You are not astray," he murmured into her hair, his voice a low rumble. "You are not broken. You are magnificent." She lifted her head, her eyes shining with unshed tears. He was looking at her as if she were the only thing in the room, the only thing in the world. He lowered his head. The kiss, this time, was not a collision. It was a discovery. It began slowly, a soft, hesitant question. His lips brushed hers, once, twice. She did not pull away. She sighed, a small sound of surrender, and her lips parted, answering him. It was everything. It was the taste of his skin, the scent of his cologne, the solid, unshakable strength of him. His hand moved from her back, sliding up her spine to tangle in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. Her hands came up to grip his shoulders, her fingers digging into the expensive fabric as if to hold on. This was not a kiss of simple passion. It was a kiss of release. It was the culmination of weeks of fear, of healing, of hesitation, of longing. It was trust, finally and freely given. It soothed the old, jagged pains and promised something new, something fierce and whole. He broke the kiss, his breathing ragged, and pressed his forehead to hers again. "Lena," he breathed, as if her name were a prayer. He swept her into his arms, one arm under her knees, the other behind her back, and carried her from the living room. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her face buried in the warm skin of his neck. He did not take her to her room. He took her to his room was darker, sparser, dominated by a bed even larger than hers. The only light came from the city and the flashes of lightning, turning their skin to silver and shadow. He set her on her feet, but he did not let her go. Their clothes seemed to melt away, a slow, deliberate unwrapping. His hands were not rough, but they were sure. He unbuttoned her leggings, his fingers brushing the skin of her hip. She shivered. Her hands fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, clumsy with need. He stopped her, covering her hands with his own. "Slow," he whispered. "We have time." He undressed her with a reverence that made her want to weep, his eyes tracing the faded scars, the pale lines, not as imperfections, but as a map of the battles she had survived. He kissed the scar on her arm, the one from the boiling water. He kissed the spot on her jaw where the bruise had been, when they were finally bare, skin to skin. He laid her on the cool, silk sheets. He did not take her. He just held her. He looked at her, his gaze full of a raw, hungry tenderness. They moved together, a slow, emotional rhythm that was more embrace than act. It was careful. It was tender. It was a silent conversation of whispered promises and ancient, unspoken needs. Every touch was an affirmation. You are safe. You are wanted. You are mine. When it was over, they lay tangled, the storm outside mirroring the spent energy in the room. Lena's head was on his chest, her leg thrown over his, her body humming with a peace so profound it was almost shocking. For a long time, there was only the sound of their breathing. "No one," he said, his voice a low rumble, breaking the silence. "It has been years since I let anyone get this close." Lena lifted her head, propping herself on her elbow to see his face in the dark. "The last person who was in this bed," he said, his eyes on the ceiling, his jaw tight, "used that closeness to try and destroy me." He did not say more. He did not need to. Lena looked at his hard, beautiful, dangerous face. She saw the vulnerability he was trusting her with. She leaned down and kissed the corner of his mouth, a soft, promising touch. "I am not her," she whispered, her voice fierce. "I will not run." He turned his head, his dark eyes finding hers. He did not say, "I know." He did not need to. He simply tightened his arm around her, pulling her back down, holding her as if he would never let her go. Far below them, in the rain-slicked, neon-lit streets, a man watched La Fortezza. Trevor Hayes wiped the rainwater from his face. His eyes narrowed in jealous, bitter rage. He had seen the black car, he had seen the Renzetti crest, and he had heard the whispers from the gutter about the boss and his new guest. That night, Dominic's head of security, Angelo, intercepted a garbled, anonymous message sent from a burner phone, bouncing through 3 different servers. It was sloppy, but its intent was clear. "You stole my girl. I want her back." The morning light in Dominic's bedroom was soft, filtered through curtains that muted the city. Lena woke up first, tangled in sheets that smelled like him. A complex, clean scent of expensive soap, faint spice, something uniquely, darkly male. She'd never known this kind of peace. A quiet so profound it felt like a physical blanket. She slipped out of bed, pulling on one of his long-sleeved t-shirts. It fell to her mid-thigh, a soft gray armor that felt more protective than anything she had ever worn. She padded into the kitchen, the silence of the penthouse a comfort, and started the coffee machine. When the elevator chimed, it was not Dominic but Angelo, holding a small, sealed envelope. He handed it to her wordlessly and retreated to his post outside the door. Lena, curious, placed it on the counter. Dominic emerged from his office an hour later, his hair damp from a shower, his face clean-shaven. He looked rested, and when he saw her in his shirt, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his mouth. He kissed her. A long, slow kiss that was both a greeting and a claim. It was possessive, but it was not threatening. It was ownership. "Good morning," she murmured against his lips. "It is," he said, his voice a low rumble. He saw the envelope on the counter and his smile faded. He picked it up. "Angelo just brought it," she said, turning to pour his coffee. He tore it open. It was a single sheet of paper. A message printed in crude, block letters, a transcript of the one intercepted by his team. Lena turned, holding his mug, and saw his face. It was no longer the man who had kissed her. It was the man who had blood on his hands. It was the boss. "Dominic, what is it?" He did not answer. He just held the paper out to her. Her eyes scanned the words. "You stole my girl. I want her back." The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor, the hot coffee splashing across the gleaming white. Lena did not even notice. The blood drained from her face, leaving her a sick, pale white. "My girl," she whispered, her voice choking. It is him. It is Trevor." The fragile peace of the morning, of the entire past week, shattered like the cup at her feet. "Oh, God!" she gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, God, Dominic, what have I done?" She backed away from him, her eyes wide with a terror so profound it eclipsed everything else. He knows. He knows I am here. I brought him to you. I brought this to your doorstep. "Lena," he said, his voice a low, hard command. No, I have to go." She was babbling, half crying, running on pure, adrenalized fear. She turned and fled toward the bedroom, to the few things she now owned. "I have to leave. I will not let him hurt you. He's crazy. Dominic, you do not understand. He'll burn your whole world down just to get at me. I have to go." She was pulling open drawers, grabbing the soft t-shirts, the leggings he had provided, tears streaming down her face. "Lena." He was in the doorway. He was not moving, just watching her, an immovable object. "Please, Dominic, just let me go," she begged, collapsing onto the bed, her hands full of clothes. "I cannot be the reason. I will not be the reason he hurts you. He is obsessive. He will not stop. Just let me disappear. I can go north. He will never find me." He walked slowly toward her. He crowed in front of her, forcing her to look at him. He gently, firmly, took the clothes from her shaking hands and set them aside. "Do you think I am afraid of him?" he asked, his voice quiet. "No," she wept, "but I am, for you." He took her face in his hands, his callous thumbs brushing away the hot tears. His eyes were dark, intense, and utterly calm. "Listen to me," he said, and the command in his voice cut through her panic. "When I brought you here, when I found you in that car, you were a guest, a person I was helping." He leaned in, his forehead pressing against hers, the way he had done after their first, impulsive kiss. "Things are different now. You are not my guest anymore." She held her breath, her eyes locked on his. "You are mine," he whispered. The words a brand, a vow. "And I protect what is mine. You are not leaving. You are not running. You are staying here, where I can see you, and I am going to handle this." The possessiveness in his voice, which would have terrified her coming from any other man, was the only thing that stopped her shaking. It was not the desperate, unstable obsession of Trevor. It was the absolute, unshakable promise of a king. "He will not stop," she whispered, a last desperate plea. "Good," Dominic said, a terrible, cold smile touching his lips. "Then he is predictable." Trevor escalated. The next day, a package arrived. This time, it was not intercepted. It was delivered directly to the penthouse, addressed to Dominic Renzetti. Angelo had cleared it. But it was not a bomb. It was something worse. Dominic was in his office, in a tense meeting with his consigliere, Marco, when Lena brought it in. It is for you," she said, her voice small. "Just put it on the desk, Kara," he said, his attention focused on the spreadsheets Marco had opened. "Boss," Marco said, his tone grim. "The Valenti crew, they are the ones who backed this Stronzo Trevor. They bought his marker. He's working with them." Dominic's head snapped up. "The Valentis are using my woman to get to me. They are using his obsession to get to you," Marco corrected. But he knew it was a losing battle. "This is not just about Lena anymore. They are testing you. They see her as your weakness, and they are pushing. They want a war, Dom, and they are using this bastard to start it. Then a war they will get." Dominic growled. "Dominic," Lena said, her voice shaking. He and Marco finally looked at her. She was holding the open envelope, her hand trembling. A small stack of photographs was in her palm. "What is it?" Dominic asked, his irritation at the interruption fading into concern. She could not speak. She just held them out. Dominic took them. They were not threats. They were memories. They were ghosts. The first was Lena. Her face turned away, but the massive purple bruise covering her shoulder and back was unmistakable. The second was her, cowering in the corner of her old apartment, her hands up as if to ward off a blow. The third, and worst, was a close-up of her face, her eye swollen shut, a single tear tracking from the other as she held a bag of frozen peas to her cheek. Lena made a small, strangled sound, as if she were suffocating. Dominic looked at the photos, his face going utterly, terrifyingly blank. The air in the room became heavy, suffocating. He used to take pictures," she whispered, her voice sounding far away. He said it was to remind me what I made him do." Dominic carefully, almost reverently, placed the photos on his desk. He looked at the one of her with the black eye. Marco, seeing the look on his boss's face, began to back toward the door. "Boss." Dominic did not hear him. He was perfectly still for 1, 2, 3 seconds. Then, with a roar that was pure, apex predator rage, He swept his arm across the desk, the high-end laptop, the monitors, the heavy crystal whiskey decanter. All of it was launched into the air, smashing against the far wall. But it was not enough. He gripped the edge of the massive, custom-built mahogany desk, his knuckles white, his biceps straining against his suit. He let out another guttural sound as he lifted, his muscles screaming. He was trying to break the unbreakable, to destroy the solid wood with his bare hands. The ancient desk groaned, a leg splintering at the joint. "I will kill him," he said. His voice not a yell, but a low, terrifying promise that vibrated with killing intent. "I will tear him apart with my own hands." "Dominic!" Lena screamed. She ran to him, grabbing his arm, pulling him away from the wreckage, terrified not of him, but for him. She'd never seen such unrestrained fury. He was panting, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He saw her, and the rage faltered, replaced by a sudden, agonizing tenderness. He pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest, his hand tangling in her hair as he held her head to his shoulder. He was hiding the world from her, and hiding her from his own rage. Over her head, his eyes, still burning, met Marco's. His message was clear. There were no more rules. The penthouse became a fortress, but Lena refused to be a prisoner. The change came in the form of a woman who walked into the penthouse as if she owned it, which, in a way, she did. She had Dominic's eyes and his commanding presence, but where he was a dark, quiet shadow, she was a wildfire. "So," the woman said, looking Lena up and down, "you are the one who finally made my brother break his favorite desk. I am Sophia." Dominic's sister. Lena, intimidated, could only nod. Sophia circled her, her appraisal sharp and not entirely kind. "He has you guarded. He has you locked in this tower. He thinks he is protecting you." She scoffed. "He's being a man. He's building a cage. He does not understand. You do not survive a wolf by hiding from it. You survive by becoming one." I do not know how," Lena whispered, ashamed. "No," Sophia agreed, "but you will learn. I will be here tomorrow, 7 in the morning, in the gym. Do not be late." The training was a special kind of hell. Sophia was relentless. She was a master of Krav Maga, a brutal, efficient form of self-defense. "Again," Sophia commanded, her voice ringing through the empty gym. Lena threw a punch, but it was weak, hesitant. Sophia blocked it easily and slapped her, a sharp, stinging blow across the cheek. Lena recoiled, tears springing to her eyes. "Do not cry," Sophia snapped. "Crying is what victims do. You will not be a victim. You will be a weapon. He hit you. This garbage, Trevor, he hit you, and you cowered. Now, you will learn to hit back. Again." Something in Lena snapped. The sting on her cheek, the humiliation, the memory of Trevor, it all coalesced into a single, burning point of rage. She screamed, a raw, primal sound, and launched herself at Sophia. Sophia, surprised by the sudden fire, laughed. She sidestepped, caught Lena in a joint lock, and took her to the mat, but the respect in her eyes was new. "Good," she panted, letting Lena go. "There you are. I see the fire. Now, we will learn how to aim it." For weeks, Lena trained. Her body ached, her knuckles were raw, but for the first time in her life, she felt her own power. Meanwhile, the war outside the penthouse escalated. The Valentis were testing Dominic's defenses, drawing him out. One of his armored cars was found in the river, its tires slashed. A shipment of liquor was hijacked. They were small, irritating. Costly attacks designed to make him look weak, to force him to overreact. Dominic grew darker, more stressed. He spent long nights in his office with Marco, planning, countering, but he would always come and find Lena in the gym, watching her. One night, he found her long after Sophia had left, her hair slick with sweat, her hands wrapped, pounding a heavy bag with a rhythm that was both graceful and brutal. He watched her, his heart aching with a pride and a desire so fierce it almost brought him to his knees. She finished, panting, and finally saw him. She did not flinch, she did not cower. She just looked at him, her eyes bright with exhaustion and something new. "Fire. You are strong," he said, his voice rough. She unwrapped her hands, her new muscles flexing. "I did not know I was allowed to be," she said, her voice steady. I spent so long trying to be small, to not make a sound, to not take up space. I thought that was how you survived, by being invisible." She looked at her own hands, at the raw knuckles. "I did not know I was allowed to feel this strong." He stepped toward her. "Show me." "What?" she asked, her breath catching. "Show me what Sophia taught you," he said. "Spar with me." "I am not him. I will not break." He came at her, fast and low. She reacted on instinct, blocking his arm, her body moving in a way she never thought possible. He was toying with her, testing her, his movements fluid and powerful. "Good," he praised, circling her. "But you are thinking. Do not think. Feel." He lunged, and she ducked, but he was too fast. He caught her, spinning her around, and slammed her, gently but firmly, against the padded wall of the gym. He pinned her, his forearm across her collarbone, his body a heavy, warm weight caging her. They were both breathing hard, the air thick with the smell of sweat and the clean, sharp scent of adrenaline. "Not bad," he whispered, his lips just inches from hers. The fight, the fear, the adrenaline, and the weeks of pent-up longing coalesced. This was not fear. This was life. She looked at him, her chest heavy against his, and then she did something neither of them expected. She grabbed his wrist, the one pinning her, her grip surprisingly strong. He looked down at her small, powerful hand on his arm, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. The sparring was over. He leaned in, and the kiss was not soft. It was not gentle. It was a raw, electric collision of two equal, desperate forces. It was all teeth and tongue, and a fight for dominance that neither wanted to win. It tasted of salt, of sweat, of her, of him. She laughed, a breathless, giddy sound as he lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he pressed her harder against the wall. The passion was sudden, immediate, and all-consuming. It was the thrill of the fight, the sharp edge of danger, the safety of his arms, and the heat of her own strength, all blended into one. He pulled back, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling. "You are," he panted. "Incredible." Later that night, the peace in the penthouse was different. It was not the fragile peace of before. It was a solid, earned calm. They lay on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, Lena's head on his chest. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I told you I would keep you safe, but I am not just keeping you safe. That is not what this is." He kissed the top of her head. "When this is over, when Trevor is gone, and the Valentis are put back in their place, I want to give you a future, Lena. A real one, not just safety." It was the closest he had ever come to saying he loved her. It was his promise of permanence. Lena felt tears well in her eyes, but for the first time in her life, they were not tears of fear or pain. They were tears of joy. She kissed his hand, her heart too full to speak. They slept in his bed, tangled together, the city lights a distant, silent glow. The sound that woke them was not loud. It was a soft, metallic click from the living room. Dominic was awake in an instant. In one fluid motion, he was sitting up, the gun he kept in the nightstand drawer in his hand. "What?" Lena whispered, her heart leaping into her throat. "Shh," he commanded. "Stay in this room. Do not," he said, his eyes hard. "Come out." He moved, a silent shadow in the dark, slipping out of the bedroom and pulling the door almost closed behind him. Lena sat, her heart pounding, her ears straining. She heard a muffled voice, a scuffle, and then the sound that shattered the world. Pop, 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 gunfire. Not a loud explosion, but the silenced, deadly sound of professional weapons. "Dominic!" she screamed, her blood running cold. She scrambled from the bed, ignoring his order, and ran to the door. She pulled it open. The penthouse was dark, but the elevator doors were open, the light from the hallway spilling in. She saw Angelo, Dominic's bodyguard, slumped against the wall, a dark pool spreading on the marble floor. Before she could scream, a heavy hand clamped over her mouth from behind. She was not alone in the room. She fought, she twisted, she bit, she stomped. She drove her elbow back, just as Sophia had taught her. She connected with something solid, and the man grunted. But there was another, Strong arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her off the ground. She kicked, scratching at the hand over her face. "We have her!" A voice growled. She saw a flash of movement near the elevator. Dominic, he was alive. He was fighting, but there were too many. "Lena!" he roared. A third man approached her. His face masked, he held a small, dark object. Lena felt a sharp, cold sting in her neck, a needle. Her strength evaporated instantly. The world tilted, the edges of her vision turning dark and blurry. Her legs gave out. "Dominic," she whispered, her voice already numb. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her completely was Dominic's face, contorted in a mask of pure, primal rage. As two men held him back, she was dragged, limp, toward the open elevator. Lena was taken. Dominic woke to a silence that was louder than a scream. The world came back to him in a painful, groggy rush, his head pounding from the blow he had taken from behind, a taser's electric venom still singing in his muscles. The penthouse was dark. The city lights, usually a comforting, diamond-bright panorama, were just a backdrop to a nightmare. "Lena," he grunted, pushing himself up from the cold marble floor. He was in the living room. The elevator doors were open. A dark, empty maw. Across the room, he saw a shape. "Angelo," he rasped, his voice raw. He stumbled, his body protesting, to his head of security. Angelo was slumped against the wall, his dark suit stained even darker. He was alive, but his breathing was shallow. His pulse a faint, thready beat against Dominic's fingers, a gunshot wound, low in his abdomen. "Lena!" he roared, the name a raw tear in the quiet. He spun, his eyes scanning the chaos. His bedroom door was splintered, hanging off one hinge. The signs of a massive, brief struggle were everywhere. She was gone. A wave of cold, bottomless rage washed through him, so potent it cleared his head. It was not the hot fury from before. This was a precise, killing cold. He spotted it. A piece of white paper, not on the floor, but pinned to Angelo's shirt. A cruel, deliberate message. He ripped it free. 5 words scrawled in a frantic, unhinged hand. "If you want her back, come alone." Below it, an address, a derelict warehouse district on the Valenti-controlled waterfront. Dominic did not hesitate. He pulled his phone, his thumb hitting the speed dial. "Marco, Sophia, penthouse, now," he commanded. He then dialed his private medical team. "Angelo is down. GSW, get here. Save him." He ended the calls and went to work. His first duty was to the man who had bled for him. He ripped open a decorative cushion, pressing the clean insides to Angelo's wound, applying brutal, saving pressure. He held it until he heard the private elevator, and his team swarmed in, taking over. He walked, without a word, past them. He did not go to his office. He went to a blank wall in his dressing room, pressed his palm to a biometric scanner, and the wall slid away, revealing his armory. It was not a collection. It was a statement of intent. He did not just grab a pistol. He began to suit up, his movements fluid and economical, a lightweight, flexible, bullet and knife-proof vest under his shirt, 2 custom-stamped pistols, holstered at his hips, a third, smaller at the small of his back, a fourth at his ankle, 2 knives, extra magazines, which he slotted into the vest with sharp, metallic clicks. He was not a businessman. He was not a boss. He was a soldier. "Dominic!" Sophia burst in first, her face pale, Marco on her heels. They saw the blood on the marble, the medical team working frantically, the open armory. "Where is she?" Sophia demanded, her voice shaking with a rage that mirrored his. "They took her," Dominic said, his voice a low, dead rumble. He did not look up, his hands busy checking the action on his main pistol. "Trevor, the Valentis, they took her." He tossed the note onto a table. Marco read it, his face hardening. "It is a trap. Dominic," Marco said, his voice a desperate plea for reason. "You know this. You go in alone. You die. She dies. This is what they want. They are using her to get you in the open." "I am going," Dominic said, sliding a final magazine into his vest. "Brother, fratello, please," Sophia begged, finally breaking, her hand grabbing his arm. The gesture was so much like Lena's. It almost made him pause. Do not let your rage make you stupid. Let us call the men. We have 50 soldiers who would tear that warehouse down with their bare hands for you. For her. No. He shook her off, his eyes finally meeting theirs. They were not the eyes of their brother. They were the eyes of a killer. Empty and focused. Alone. That is the price. If I bring an army, they kill her. They are cowards. They will use her, and they will kill her the second they see my men. He started to walk toward the elevator. They expect me to risk her, he said, half to himself. By not coming alone, they think they know me. He hit the button. They are right. I will not risk her. Dominic, Marco yelled, desperate. You are one man. This is suicide. The elevator doors opened. Dominic turned, and for a second a flicker of the man they knew was there. They think I am a businessman, he whispered, the sound a promise of violence. Tonight, they meet the monster. He stepped in. Keep Angelo alive. Find the man on my team who betrayed me, and hold him for me, and wait for my call. The doors slid shut. Lena woke to the smell of rust and cold, damp concrete. Her head felt like it had been split open, the last dregs of the drug making the world tilt. She was in a chair, but it was not the soft leather of the penthouse. It was hard, cold metal, and it was cutting into her. Her hands were bound behind her, her ankles tied to the chair legs. The restraints were thick, cutting plastic, zip ties, a single, weak bulb buzzed overhead, illuminating a small, filthy circle in a warehouse so vast her eyes could not find the walls. It was freezing. Well. Sleeping Beauty is finally awake. The voice she had spent the last year trying to claw out of her memory. Trevor stepped out of the shadows. He was a nightmare caricature of the man she had known. He was thin, almost skeletal, his skin a sickly, pale color. But his clothes were expensive, a cheap gaudle. An imitation of Dominic's style. His eyes were the worst. They were wide, unblinking, and burned with a manic, jealous fire. Trevor, she whispered, her throat dry. Let me go. He threw his head back and laughed, a high, cracking sound that echoed in the huge, empty space. Let you go? Let you go? I finally get you back, and you want me to let you go? No, sweetheart, not again. You are mine. You always were. He began to circle her, like a jackal. I see he has been treating you well. New clothes. You look healthier. Living in that glass tower, sleeping in a killer's bed. He is not a killer. Lena spat, the words tasting like acid, but she said them. A spark of defiance she did not know she had. Oh, Lena, sweetheart, he sneered, crouching in front of her, his face inches from hers. She could smell the sour whiskey on his breath. That is exactly what he is. Who do you think you have been sleeping with? He kills people for money. I just got angry. I am passionate. He is a monster. You are the monster, Lena said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot in the silence. Her head snapped to the side, her cheek exploding in white-hot pain. You chose him, he screamed, his new, fancy composure shattering, revealing the same pathetic, violent man underneath. You left me, the man who loved you. You left me for a goon, a killer in a fancy suit. You think he loves you? He owns you, Lena, just like he owns that building, those cars, this whole damn city. Lena slowly turned her head back. She tasted the metallic tang of blood in her mouth. She remembered Sophia's voice. Do not cry. Crying is what victims do. You will not be a victim. She looked him in the eye and spat the blood onto his expensive pointed shoe. He's more of a man than you will ever be, she said, her voice low and steady. He protected me. You just tried to break me. Trevor's face went from white to a deep, mottled purple. He raised his hand to hit her again, but he stopped, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his lips. No, you are right. I did try to break you, and now he gets to watch me finish the job. He stood up, pacing. He is coming, got the message, come alone. And he will. Because he is just as stupid as you are. He thinks he is a hero, and when he gets here, he will get to watch me put a bullet in your perfect, new, unbroken face, and then my new partners. He gestured to the shadows, where Lena now saw the shapes of at least 6 other men. We'll kill him. It was their plan all along, using me to get to you, to get to him. It is poetry. A puppet. He was just a puppet, and she was the bait. Lena's fear did not vanish, but it sharpened. It turned to steel. She was not the girl from the car. She began to twist her wrists, pulling the zip ties against the sharp metal edge of the chair. She remembered Sophia's lesson. Create friction. Find the weak point. It will hurt. Let it hurt. The plastic bit deep. A sharp, searing pain. But she did not stop. She needed to stall. So that is it? She taunted, her voice echoing. You are just the Valenti's little errand boy. I thought you were a musician. Trevor, now you are just a tool. Shut up, he shrieked, his composure gone. They are my partners. They respect me. A sound from the front of the warehouse cut him off, a sound like a freight train hitting a metal wall. Crash. The massive rolling metal doors of the warehouse bowed inward, then were ripped from their hinges as Dominic's armored SUV, headlights on full beam, rocketed into the space. The warehouse was flooded with blinding halogen light, catching Trevor and his borrowed Valenti muscle in the glare like panicked rats, before anyone could even raise a weapon. The driver's door of the SUV flew open. Dominic stepped out, not as a man, but as a force of nature. He was dressed in black, armored, and he moved with a speed that defied logic. The first shots were his. Pop, pop. The 2 men closest to him, their hands just reaching for their guns, dropped. Clean. Efficient. No wasted motion. Trevor, one of the other men, yelled, opening fire on the SUV, the bullets sparking uselessly off the armor. Trevor, in a move of pure, sniveling cowardice, grabbed Lena. He hauled her, chair and all, to her feet, shoving a pistol to her temple. Stop, he screamed, his voice cracking. Stop, Renzetti, or I will kill her. I swear to God, I will shoot her right now. Dominic froze. He was halfway across the floor, his pistols in a low, ready stance, his eyes scanning the darkness. He was a shadow, and they were caught in his light. Let her go, Trevor. Dominic's voice was a low, amplified growl, a sound of pure menace that vibrated in Lena's bones. No, you took her. Trevor shrieked, his hand shaking, the gun's muzzle digging into Lena's scalp. You do not get to win. You do not get to take what is mine. She was never yours, Dominic said, taking one slow, deliberate step forward. I will do it. I will. Stop. This was it. Lena felt the zip tie on her right wrist snap. Her hand was free, but numb and bleeding. She did not care. She remembered Sophia. He thinks he controls you. Use his body against him. She slammed her head backward, connecting with a satisfying, solid crack against Trevor's nose. He howled, his grip on her chair loosening, the gun wavering. It was all the time Dominic needed. Pop. A single shot. It did not hit Trevor. It hit the gun in his hand, shattering the mechanism and sending it clattering to the concrete floor. Trevor screamed, staring at his mangled, bleeding hand. Lena was already moving. She threw her weight, chair and all, to the side, rolling away from him, away from the line of fire. She worked on the other tie. Dominic was on Trevor in a fraction of a second. He did not use his gun. This was personal. The first punch landed with the sound of breaking bone. The second, the third. Dominic was not just hitting him. He was a machine, dismantling him. It was the cold, brutal, focused rage of the man who had seen the photographs. You touched her, Dominic grunted, each word punctuated by a heavy, sickening blow. The remaining Valenti men, seeing their plan disintegrate, opened fire from the shadows. Dominic, in a move of pure, savage instinct, grabbed Trevor's broken body and used him as a human shield. Returning fire with his free hand, he was in his element, a whirlwind of controlled, lethal violence. One by one, the other men fell. The warehouse went quiet. The only sounds were the tink-tink-tink of the cooling SUV engine and Trevor's wet, gurgling moans. Lena's other hand was free. She scrambled to her feet, untying her ankles. She looked up. Dominic had dropped Trevor's body, which was now just a heap on the floor. He stood over him, his pistol raised, aimed directly at Trevor's head. He was going to execute him. "Dominic!" Lena screamed, her voice raw. He turned, and in the harsh glare of the headlights, she saw his face. It was a mask of blood, Trevor's, not his, and his eyes were black, empty, and terrifying. He was the monster. "Please," she whispered, her hands outstretched, tears finally streaming down her face. Not for him, for me. Do not be him." Dominic looked at her face, her raw wrists, her split lip. He looked at the pathetic, broken man on the floor. He was breathing hard, his whole body trembling with the effort to hold back. He lowered the gun. He let out a breath, a shudder that ran through his entire frame. Then, in one vicious and final motion, he reversed the pistol, gripping it by the barrel, and brought the heavy butt down on Trevor's temple. The man went limp, unconscious. "For you," Dominic breathed, the words lost in the vast, cold air, a new sound, sirens, distant but getting closer, fast. "They must have heard the shots," Lena said, her legs shaking. "The Valentis," Dominic said, already moving, pulling her to him. He checked her, his hands running over her arms, her face. A cleanup crew, a trap inside a trap. He pulled a small, black device from his vest. "This place is full of their product, old gas, chemicals. They were going to burn it all anyway. Evidence. Us." He pushed her toward a small, metal door she had not seen. "This way." He pressed the button. In the far corner, near a stack of oil drums, a small, bright charge ignited. The flames caught instantly, a whoosh that sucked the air from the room. They burst through the back door into a cold, wet alley. The roar of the fire at their backs. As they ran, a black SUV, its lights off, screeched to a halt beside them. The back door flew open. "Get in!" Sophia yelled from the driver's seat. They piled in. Marco was in the passenger seat, a shotgun on his lap. The doors slammed, and the SUV sped away, its tires smoking, just as the first police cars and fire trucks wailed around the front of the burning warehouse. The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Lena was shaking, the adrenaline and the drug leaving her in a cold, trembling heap. Dominic did not say a word. He just pulled her into his lap, wrapping her in his arms, his armored vest a hard, cold comfort. He held her as if he would never, ever let her go. The penthouse was clean. The blood was gone. A new private medic was waiting. Angela was at a private hospital, stable. The medic tended to Lena's wounds with quiet efficiency, the raw, bleeding scrapes on her wrists, the split lip, the blooming bruise on her cheek. Dominic stood watch, a silent, dark sentinel, his armor still on, his face still streaked with soot and Trevor's blood. He did not move. He just watched, his jaw so tight it looked like it was carved from stone. When the medic finished, he gave Dominic a nod. "She is strong. She will be fine. Just shaken." He left. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in pale, bruised shades of purple and gray. Lena stood in the middle of the vast living room, her wrists bandaged in clean, white gauze. "He will go to prison, right?" she whispered. Dominic finally moved, unstrapping the vest, letting it fall to the floor with a heavy thud. "He will," he said, his voice a low, honest rasp. "The police will find him, bound in a burning building full of narcotics. The Valentis will not claim him. He will not touch you again." She touched her split lip, then looked at him. At the man who had just gone to war for her, and come back. "You did not kill him." "I wanted to," he said, stepping closer, "more than I have ever wanted anything. But you did not." He stopped in front of her. His large, calloused hand came up, his fingers gently, so gently, tracing the line of her jaw, his touch a butterfly's weight, careful not to touch the bruise. "You asked me not to," he said. Lena leaned into his touch, a profound, shuddering sigh leaving her. The fear was gone. The ghosts were gone. The old Lena was gone. She looked into his dark, exhausted eyes, and she saw not a monster, but a protector. "You did not just save me tonight," she said, her voice clear and strong in the quiet of the new morning. "You gave me the strength to save myself when I fought him. In that chair. I was not afraid. I was angry. You and Sophia. You taught me how to fight. You gave me that. Dominic closed his eyes, a look of almost physical relief passing over his face. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers, and breathed her in. "Get some sleep, Lena," he murmured. "Only if you do," she whispered, her bandaged hands coming up to cup his face. He nodded, and for the first time, he led her to the bedroom, not to protect her from the world, but to rest with her, finally and completely, in the home they had, together, bought in blood. Weeks later, the city was still talking about the waterfront inferno. The Bravestone Press had spun a wild, contradictory tale of a narcotics deal gone wrong, a brave anonymous tip, and a lone, unidentified survivor, Trevor Hayes, found bound and beaten, but alive, amid the wreckage. Dominic, however, was already moving on to the ashes. He did not testify in any court of law. His testimony was delivered in a far more final, binding way. He sat in his office, his consigliere, Marco, across from him, as he finalized the narrative that the state would adopt. "The evidence is in place," Marco said, ticking items off a list. The planted narcotics shipped from a Valenti warehouse were logged by the police. The anonymous tip from a rival distributor pointed them directly to Trevor Hayes as the Valenti's new, ambitious point of contact. Dominic sipped his coffee, his face impassive. "And the photographs?" "Handled," Marco said. They were found in Hayes' apartment, along with several threatening, obsessive letters addressed to Lena. The district attorney is not painting him as a kidnapper. He's painting him as an unhinged, spurned lover who tried to leverage his ex-girlfriend to gain favor with the Valentis, and who then, in a jealous rage, burned the whole operation to the ground. "Good," Dominic said. "He's not a monster. He's a pathetic, obsessive fool. That is how he will be remembered. He will be buried under the jail. Boss. With the drug charges, arson, and the evidence of stalking, he will not see daylight for at least 30 years. And the Valentis have cut him loose entirely. They will not risk their own operation to save their pawn." "And Lena's name?" Dominic asked. The only question that truly mattered. "She's listed only as the victim. Her name is sealed, filed as a witness too intimidated to testify. She will never have to enter a courtroom. She will never have to see his face again." Dominic nodded, closing the file. The last ghost was being exorcised, not with violence, but with paperwork. The system, which had so completely failed Lena, was now being wielded by him as a scalpel, cutting her free for good. While Dominic was busy burying the past, he was also, quietly, building Lena's future. One rainy afternoon, he told her to put on a coat. He did not say where they were going. He drove her, not in his armored SUV, but in a simple, elegant black sedan, to a part of town she had not seen since before her life had fallen apart. It was a quiet, tree-lined street, the kind with old brickwork and gas street lamps. It was the street she had once told him about, in a half-asleep late-night confession. "I used to dream," she had murmured, her head on his chest, "about a little bookstore cafe. It was called the Page Kettle. It always smelled like old books and cinnamon. I used to go there and read for hours, just to feel safe." He pulled up to the curb. The sign was still there, a charming, painted sign of a teapot pouring books, but the windows were dark, a For Lease sign hanging in the window, stark and white. "Oh," Lena whispered, her heart sinking. "Of course. It is gone." Dominic killed the engine. The only sound was the rhythmic thwack-thwack of the windshield wipers. "It went under 3 months ago," he said, his voice quiet. "The owner retired." He reached into his pocket and produced a single, old-fashioned brass key on a new, heavy key ring. Lena looked at the key, then at his face. "Dominic, what did you do?" "I did not do anything," he said. "The bank finalized the sale of the building and its assets this morning." He held the key out to her. "It is yours, the deed, the business license, the inventory. It is all in your name." Lena stared at the key as if it were a burning coal. "Dominic, this is too much. I cannot, this is just another beautiful cage, a job you are giving me." "No," he said, his voice firm, turning to look at her. "It is not a cage. It is a fortress. It is not a job. It is a business. Your business. My name is on nothing. Your credit, which my accountants have, repaired, is the only thing on the paperwork. It is yours, Lena, to run, to sell, to burn to the ground. It is your choice. That is all I wanted to give you." She looked at him, at the absolute sincerity in his dark eyes. He was not giving her a gift. He was giving her back the agency that Trevor had stolen. Her hand, steady and sure, reached out and took the key. She looked at it. A heavy, solid piece of metal. Then, with a click, she unhooked the single key from the new ring. She held the key ring, now empty, in her left hand. She held the single key in her right. She pressed the single brass key into his palm and closed his large, calloused fingers around it. "Then you keep this one," she said, her voice thick with emotion. He looked confused. "Lena, I told you. It is yours." "I know," she said, her eyes shining with tears, but her smile was bright. "But you built this too. You built me back. Dominic, you do not get to just walk away. You keep one key. It means you are always welcome. It means you have a place to go when you do not want to be the boss, when you just want a good cup of coffee." He looked at the key in his hand, then at her. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, a smile that reached his eyes and transformed him. He leaned in and kissed her, not with passion, but with a profound, quiet devotion. "I would like that," he said against her lips. The true test, however, came in the form of a Sunday dinner. Dominic announced it casually, as if he were not leading her into the lion's den. "We're having dinner at my mother's house. Sophia will be there. You should wear something warm." Lena's fear of Trevor was gone. Her fear of Elena Renzetti, the woman who had birthed and raised the most powerful man in Bravestone, was immediate and palpable. The Renzetti family home was not a modern fortress like the penthouse. It was an old-world brick mansion, covered in ivy, with a garden that was clearly tended by a loving, if brutal, hand. Dominic was tense. He kept adjusting his cuffs, a nervous tic she had never seen. A small, severe-looking woman with Dominic's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones opened the door. She was in her late 60s, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, a simple black dress covered by a pristine white apron. She was, Lena realized, terrifying. Elena Renzetti looked at Lena, her gaze sweeping over her from head to toe. She did not smile. She just looked. "So," Elena said, her voice a low, accented rumble, "you are the one. You are too thin. Vieni, come in. Dinner is on the table." The dinner was a loud, chaotic, loving affair. Sophia was there, with her husband, and they argued passionately about wine. Marco was there, and he treated Dominic's mother with a reverence that bordered on fear. And Dominic, at his mother's table, was not the boss. He was just Domenico, the son, who was told to sit up straight and not to put his elbows on the table. Elena did not speak to Lena for the entire meal, which only heightened Lena's terror. After the meal, as the men went to the study for brandy, Elena grabbed Lena's arm. Her grip was like steel. "You, come." She dragged Lena into the enormous, warm kitchen, which smelled of garlic, basil, and a lifetime of cooking. She pointed to a bowl of cannoli shells. "You will fill." For 10 minutes, they worked in silence, Elena showing Lena how to pipe the thick, sweet ricotta filling. "He was a good boy," Elena said suddenly, her back to Lena as she scrubbed a pot. Lena froze. "Ma'am? My Domenico," she said, her voice softening. "He was a good boy. He smiled, he laughed, he would find stray cats and bring them home and cry when I made him let them go." She turned, her dark eyes pinning Lena. "Then his father was killed, and the boy was gone. The boss. The boss had to be born, and the boss does not smile. The boss does not bring things home." She stepped closer, and her severe face softened, just a fraction. "He has not," she said, her voice a low whisper, "smiled like this since he was a boy. He has not looked at anyone. The way he looks at you." She reached up and cupped Lena's face, her hand smelling of soap and anise. "You are the stray he finally got to keep. You put the light back in his eyes. Non lasciarlo spegnere. Do not let it go out." "I will not," Lena whispered, her throat tight. Elena smiled, a real, warm smile. "Good. Now, fix your face. You cry in my kitchen. You make the sauce salty. Go." The final piece of her transformation clicked into place at the Renzetti family annual charity gala. It was the premier event of the Bravestone social calendar, a night where the city's old money and new power collided, all in the name of philanthropy. Sophia had taken charge of Lena's appearance. There was no simple dress. There was only the armor of a queen. When Lena looked in the mirror, she did not recognize herself. She was in a gown of deep, midnight blue silk that clung to her new, strong curves. Her hair was swept up, and at her throat, heavy and brilliant, was a necklace of diamonds. They were cool against her skin, a beautiful, possessive weight. "The Renzetti diamonds," Sophia said, her voice soft. "They have not been out of the vault since my grandmother's funeral. He is making a statement. Lena." Lena saw the woman in the mirror. She was not the girl from the diner. She was not the stray from the car. She was magnificent. Dominic was waiting for her by the elevator, a black tie suit making him look less like a gangster and more like a dark god. He stopped breathing when he saw her. He said nothing. He just held out his arm. The ballroom was a sea of glittering people. The judgment, the stares, were 100 times worse than the diner. Lena felt her spine stiffen, her old fear threatening to return. "They are all staring," she whispered. "Good," Dominic murmured, his voice close to her ear. He moved his hand from her elbow, splaying it, warm and firm, on the bare skin of her lower back. The touch was a shock, a brand. It was a steel brace, claiming her, protecting her. "Let them stare. They are looking at me, and they are seeing, for the first time, that I have something to lose." His hand gave her all the confidence in the world. She lifted her chin. Later in the evening, a man approached. He was impeccably dressed, but his smile was oily. "Renzetti," the man said, his eyes sliding over Lena. "A lovely party. You have outdone yourself." "Fanucci," Dominic said, his voice flat. "Good of you to come. You know the minimum donation." Fanucci's eyes lingered on Lena, on the diamonds. "And you have a lovely new acquisition." He smiled, a thin, reptilian gesture. "You must be careful. Dominic, things and people have a way of getting lost in this city, especially things that shine so brightly." Lena felt Dominic's entire body go rigid, but she, the new Lena, did not flinch. She did not hide behind him. She met Fanucci's gaze, her expression a perfect, pleasant mask. "How kind of you to be concerned," Lena said, her voice as smooth as the silk she was wearing. "But I find I am not easily lost. I have an excellent sense of direction." Fanucci's smile faltered. He looked at Dominic, who was simply, terrifyingly, smiling. "Enjoy the party, Fanucci," Dominic said, a clear dismissal. As the man walked away, Dominic's hand on her waist tightened, a single, possessive squeeze. He leaned in, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "You see?" he whispered, a dark, proud rumble in his chest. "He threatens us. Not you. You will never face anything alone again." They returned home late, the penthouse a silent, dark sanctuary high above the sleeping city. There was no chaos, no gunfire, no threats waiting in the shadows. There was just them. Lena kicked off her high heels, her feet sighing in relief. She walked to the window, the diamonds at her throat feeling suddenly heavy, the city lights a familiar, comforting glow. Dominic came up behind her. He did not speak. He just began to undo the complex clasps of the necklace. The diamonds pooled, heavy and cold, in his hand. "They are beautiful," Lena whispered, "but they are heavy. They are just rocks, Kara," he murmured, his voice rough. He set the necklace on a table and turned her around. His hands went to the zipper of her gown. This is just silk, armor, and you do not need it." He kissed the nape of her neck. his hand slow and sure as he peeled the dress from her shoulders, letting it fall to the floor in a dark, whispering pool. This time, there was no desperation. There was no adrenaline, no fear, no proving of points. This was not a clash. It was a homecoming. He undressed her with an unhurried, tender reverence. His fingers traced the faded scar on her arm, the spot on her jaw where the bruise had been. He was mapping her, memorizing the woman he had fought for, the woman who had healed. She, in turn, unknotted his tie, her fingers moving with a new, confident grace. She unbuttoned his shirt, pressing a kiss to the warm skin over his heart. There was soft laughter, a rarity in this glass tower, when his cufflink snagged, and he, the man who could dismantle an entire criminal organization, grumbled in frustration. They fell into the bed, a tangle of limbs and silk sheets, the city lights their only witness. Their lovemaking was a slow, deep, quiet rhythm. It was a conversation without words. It was devotion. It was a promise. It was the unhurried exploration of two people who had all the time in the world because they had, together, bought that time in fire and in faith. Later, they lay in the dark. The storm was long gone. The night was peaceful. Lena's head was on his chest, her ear pressed to his heart, listening to the steady, strong, slow beat. She was wrapped in his arms, her body warm, her mind blissfully, finally, quiet. She was drifting into a sleep she knew would be safe. She felt more than heard. The rumble in his chest as he spoke, his lips brushing the top of her hair. "You'll never sleep cold again," he whispered. She sighed, a small, contented sound, curling her fingers against his warm skin. "You'll never be alone," he continued, his voice a vow, absolute and final. "You'll always have me." Lena closed her eyes. The image of a broken-down car, of a girl freezing in the back, felt like a story she had read about someone else, a lifetime ago. It was a ghost, and it had no power here. The broken car was long gone. She slept, safely, in his arms. Thank you so much for listening to our story. She slept in a broken car, until the Mafia boss told her, "Tonight, you sleep in my arms." We truly hope you enjoyed the journey. We love hearing from you, so please drop a comment below and let us know what part of the world you are listening from. If you loved this story, please show your support by subscribing to our channel, Mafia Romance Stories, so you never miss a new episode. And finally, we want to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite part? What did you think of Lena's journey and Dominic's promise? Let us know in the comments in English. We read every single one. Thank you again, and we will see you in the next story.